What's going on, everyone? I'm Wayne Grayson, and you're watching Equipment World. Happy Monday. It's time for another episode of The Dirt, the weekly construction industry and heavy equipment news show. Now, we've got a lot to cover on this week's episode, including several new machines, a massive budget shortfall at a state DOT that is impacting a lot of contractors, and a conversation with Cory Brant of John Deere talking about the company's new L-Series generation of dozers. So let's get into the week's top stories with the new equipment roundup. First up is the new Doosan DX62R-3, powered by a 59 horsepower engine. This reduced tail swing excavator is the sibling of the conventional tail swing DX63-3. Now, while the DX62R-3 has just 4.9 inches of side overhang, this 13,779 pound machine has a maximum dig depth of 13 feet 6 inches and a maximum reach of 21 feet 4 inches. Now, that dig depth and that max reach are basically identical to what's found on the DX63-3. So this machine really is designed around giving you more maneuverability and more flexibility in terms of where you can put the machine to work. Next up is the all-new Caterpillar MH3040 material handler. Now, 5 years ago, Cat discontinued its then largest model of this machine type in the M325D LMH. Now, Cat is back with a new 40 metric ton machine to replace that model. Now, owners and operators of the M325D took quite a liking to that machine, and because of that, Cat has combined the core components of that older machine with a slew of improvements brought forth by the company's next generation excavator platform. The undercarriage boom stick and cab risers on the MH3040 are all brought over from the M325D, but Cat did make improvements to the undercarriage, boom, and stick to better fit the increased size and power of the MH3040. And because the MH3040 is based on the new Caterpillar next generation excavator platform, there is an all new redesigned cab that is larger, more comfortable, and offers better visibility. Now, we recently posted a full video breakdown of the MH3040 material handler, so be sure to check that out. As with all of the machines and stories that we mention here on The Dirt, you can find the link to that video in the description below. Finishing up the new equipment roundup this week is Mack, which recently announced its return to the medium-duty truck market with its first all-new models since 2017 in the Class 6 MD6 and the Class 7 MD7. With exterior styling that echoes what is found on the Mack Anthem, the new MD6 and MD7 will both be available in a 4x2 configuration, and they'll feature a sharp wheel cut for urban maneuverability. Mack notes that the air-suspended cab design that you'll find on the MD6 and MD7 features a short, industry-leading 103-inch bumper to back of cab measurement. You can read more about the new Mack MD6 and MD7 at the link in the description below. Now, let's move on to the top construction industry headlines for this week, starting with what makes this a very special month of June for the industry and the upcoming National Trench Safety Stand-Down. This year, for the first time, the National Utility Contractors Association is devoting the entire month of June to spreading awareness to contractors across the U.S. on trench safety. Citing statistics from OSHA, the association says that in 2018, 17 industry employees died from trench accidents. Now, this National Trench Safety Month of June will also include the NUCA's established week-long safety stand-down that is based around trench safety, the National Trench Safety Stand-Down. This year's week-long trench safety stand-down is set for June 15th through the 19th, and the association says that in 2019, more than 47,000 industry professionals and first responders across 4,500 job sites from 324 organizations took part in the safety stand-down. NUCA says that the week-long safety stand-down includes a series of organized events that are held by the association and industry professionals, and those include safety training, educational seminars, live demonstrations of trench rescues, and other activities. You can find more information on the inaugural Trench Safety Month and the National Trench Safety Stand-Down at the link in the description below. In other news, Daimler AG subsidiary and Japanese truck and bus manufacturer Mitsubishi Fuso announced last week that it will discontinue the sale of new trucks here in North America. Now, the company did not say what specifically led to this decision, be it the coronavirus or other impacts to its business in North America, but they did say that it will be transitioning from a sales to a service-focused operation in the US and Canada. The company says that all of its North American dealerships will remain operational, but it will be transitioning all of its sales locations to service locations. Mitsubishi Fuso says that its locations with remaining new truck stock will continue to sell through that stock for a period of time, and buyers of those new trucks and current owners of Mitsubishi Fuso trucks will be supported by these new service-focused locations through 2028. Due to the coronavirus pandemic's impact on the sale of new cars and trucks here in the US, back in April, most automakers here began offering pretty big financing incentives to lure shoppers back into showrooms. And with 0% interest for as much as 84 months from car makers like GM and Ford, right now is a great time to buy a pickup truck for contractors who are in the market. That is, if you can find one. That's because these huge deals on financing have apparently worked, with many dealers in the US now requesting more new truck stock from their automakers. Now, in response to all this, General Motors specifically has been trying its best to ramp up new truck production of its Chevrolet Silverado and GMC Sierra trucks. And according to the Wall Street Journal, the company planned to call in 1,300 workers back to work last week to increase that production. But they had to put those plans on hold when parts suppliers in Mexico were unable to come through and meet demand with wiring harnesses needed for those new trucks. However, according to a second report from The Drive at last week's end, this week GM will be able to bring 3 of its midsize and full-size pickup plants back to 3 shifts of production and hopefully meet that new demand. Now, let's hope the financing offers continue as well. Now, rounding out the week's top headlines for the construction industry is a new report this week from our senior editor, Don McLeod, on the hugely difficult situation facing road builders in North Carolina. Road and bridge contractors there say they have seen a drastic reduction in work, forcing some of them to lay off workers. Now, all of this trouble stems from the North Carolina Department of Transportation heading into 2020 having overspent by $2 billion in 2019 and now being forced to delay hundreds of projects. But that was before the coronavirus pandemic even took hold in the US, and now with the virus spreading and the subsequent work stoppages and now large drops in gas tax and other revenues, the problem has been worsened to a devastating degree. Specifically, the NCDOT says that it is facing a $300 million revenue drop due to the virus, and it has begun furloughing its workforce of nearly 9,000 employees in stages that began on May 30th. Now, Don spoke with Victor Barber, who is the Director of North Carolina Government Relations and the Heavy Highway Division for Carolina's Associated General Contractors. And he tells Don that future lettings of projects for the next few months are virtually non-existent right now, saying, quote, that there's no work to be bid on. Now, because of the budget shortfall and the loss in revenue, the NCDOT has been forced to delay all but 50 major road projects over the next 12 months. And that's in addition to having to lay off hundreds of temporary and contract workers. And the big fear within North Carolina and the transportation infrastructure industry there is that if the DOT doesn't get some funding and soon, some contractors may be put out of business by this situation. To read more on the budget shortfall and how contractors in North Carolina are facing down this situation, be sure to read Don's full piece. You can find it at the link in the description below. So next up on this week's episode of The Dirt, we're going to be talking about the latest generation of dozers from John Deere. And to do that, we're going to welcome in Cory Brant. How's it going, Cory?
Great, Wayne.
Now, Cory, the latest dozers that you guys have introduced came at ConExpo this year, and those are the 700L and 750L. But last year, you guys actually unveiled the first machine, the first official machine in this new L series generation, and that was the 850L. With this new generation of dozers, where do you see John Deere at in the market mix for this machine type? Like, what do you think are the things that differentiate Deere dozers or set them apart from the rest of the market?
Sure, Wayne, that's a great question. So at John Deere, we've taken a very good hard look at our dozer business. And there's a couple of things that customers out there really, really want. And that is performance, ease of use, and a machine that's just going to run every single day. And that's a lot of what we use to design these new L series machines. And you're going to see that theme get carried across with all the L series machines. So when we talk about productivity, we're talking about more power, more weight, more ability to push big loads faster. We're also going to look at operator comfort, because we know it's important to keep the operator comfortable if we want them to be productive. And if we want to keep people in the business and keep them in the seat and keep them running, they have to want to be in that cab. And we talked a little bit about making it easy, whether that's serviceability or just maintenance, we're rolling all that stuff into these new L series machines as well.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into specifically the 700 and the 750L. What can operators expect to immediately notice once they hop in the cab of these machines and actually get started working? What are they going to immediately notice that's different about these machines from the machines that came before them in the K series?
With the L series, whether we're talking 850 or 750 or 700, all the L series machines are going to have a new updated cab. So that's the first thing they're going to notice. And it's going to have more room, more space inside. It's also going to have more glass. And that's really going to affect the visibility out of the machine. So they're going to be able to see, out the front better. They're going to be able to see over the tracks down alongside the machine, and also out the rear, whether they're using a winch or a ripper. They're going to be able to see right down behind that machine. There's also a ton of extra space inside there. We've added storage and places to put your cell phone, your cooler, your lunchbox, anything like that, that now all has a home. So those are a lot of the changes that went on inside that cab. When it comes to visibility, we didn't just put bigger glass and a couple of changes in the cab. We also dropped the hood line to let the operator be able to see over the front a little better. So that's kind of what they're going to see with the cab portion of it, but we didn't stop there. So we also looked at noise reduction because, like I said earlier, it's about keeping that operator comfortable. So we did a lot of things to drive the noise quality improvements on that machine. We made it quieter and we made the tone actually sound a little nicer. We also added a ton of technology to these machines, and that's something that operators are going to notice. So whether it's transmission presets to let them tailor that machine to how they want it to feel, and we can actually tie that to an operator PIN code. So when an operator gets in and configures the machine they want it, we can tie it to their PIN. And if they have someone else get in that machine, they can use their PIN code to kind of mix and match those settings. So it'll remember who was in it and how they want it configured. We also added some new grade control options. So we now have a slope control system, which is a non-GPS based automatic grade system where we can put in main falls and cross slopes and have the machine actually drive blade automatically to those planes. And then we also added some new features to the smart grade system. And the slope control system is actually very easy to upgrade to the smart grade system now. So those are all some of the technology features that folks are going to see in these new L series machines. I talked a little bit about making it easy on the maintenance side of things, and that's definitely something we did a ton of work on. So we increased oil change intervals out to 4,000 hours for the high stats and the hydraulics. So that's going to basically give you more time to run the machine without downing it to do that kind of service. Access doors, making it easier to get in to see the insides of the machines. And the sheet metal is actually a little thicker and has sealing around all the doors to help keep debris out. So those are all some of the little things that are going to help with the maintenance and service on this machine. Part that probably is going to stand out the most to an operator that gets in one of these is going to be the performance. We increased horsepower, we increased peak torque, and we also did a lot of things with the high stats. And what we were trying to accomplish here is give the operator a machine that will not only cut faster and carry bigger loads, but do it without needing to put in as many blade commands. And what I mean by that is when we fill the blade, if we get into a spot where we need to cut material, we now have the weight and the horsepower and the torque to let that machine cut that harder material without moving the blade off that grade.
And a big kind of part of that performance story for the 700L and the 750L is you guys' decision to kind of carry over that six-cylinder, 6.8 liter engine kind of from the previous generation. Could you talk about that engine a little bit and why you guys, some of the things you guys heard from customers and why it was so important to make sure that these dozers had that six-cylinder engine?
So you're exactly right with the six-cylinder engine being a critical part of these two machines. Starting out, the Deere PowerTech engines have the wet cylinder liners, which makes them extremely rebuildable and durable. They run and run and run. The other part of it is our engineers know the 6.8 liter very, very well in these size classes. So we didn't want to upset the fruit basket too much by making a big change to an engine when we already have a system that works really, really well. What we did do is we took a little bit different approach to how we get the power to the ground. So we actually slowed down the overall engine speed. And by doing that, we turn the pumps a little bit slower. When we do that, we actually save a little bit of fuel. So saving that fuel allows us to up the horsepower, up the peak torque, and still get all the power out of that engine that we need. Now, having 6 cylinders, the low end torque rise is unbelievable. And also, another thing that operators are going to notice with that 6.8 liter engine is the transient engine response. And what that is that's what customers are going to notice when they get into a truckload and they go to push through it. It's going to accept that load and the engine's going to recover quickly and carry that load even faster. So those are all the things that operators are going to notice when they're sitting in the seat. And that's part of the reason why we chose to stay with that 6.8 liter engine. To give you an example, on the 700K, we actually upped the peak torque by 8%, which is huge. And that's what I'm talking about when we talk about moving big piles and doing it effortlessly. That's what's going to do that for us.
So Cory, these machines are, they're a little bit heavier too than the K series. Could you talk about the improvements that increase in weight brings, specifically in reactive effort and balance?
Absolutely. The weight of these machines is something that we spend a lot of time focusing on with the engineers. It's real easy to just add weight or take weight out, but doing it and putting the weight in the right spot is what really matters. So when we had a chance to go back and kind of shift some things around, and we knew we wanted to increase the size of the sheet metal, the thickness of it, to give it a little bit more robust feel, that gave us a really good opportunity to shift the weight around on the machine. And what we were trying to do there is 2 things. So one, we wanted to maintain our horsepower to weight ratio. And that horsepower to weight ratio is really, really important, because that's what determines whether your machine is going to spin out all the time or whether it's going to feel lazy. So having that match right is critical. The other thing that we were looking at was our center of gravity in both the vertical and the horizontal. Most operators will feel vertical center of gravity when the machine pitches. And that's kind of what a lot of operators would use to feel grade when they're hand grading. So we spent a lot of time making sure that was low in the machine. And then we also focused a lot on the horizontal center of gravity, which helps determine when the machine's going to break over. Having those right makes a big difference when we start doing grading, and also when we're working on transitioning on and off of slopes. That's where we're going to notice that stuff. So as we shifted some weight around and added a little bit of weight, we still offer a ton of rear attachments. So whether it's a counterweight, a hitch, a drawbar, whatever you want to put on the back, those options are still there. What we always tell people is set the machine up for the application you want to use it in. So if we don't want to have, ground pressure issues, if we want to stay light, we don't necessarily have to have a rear attachment. We're still going to be a productive machine. If we want to add a little bit of extra productivity and be able to carry a little bit bigger loads, that's when we want to start adding a little bit of weight to the machine to help get the traction up.
Now I want to kind of get into the blade a little bit on these new machines. I know that you guys have made some improvements just to the standard blade design as well. So talk a bit about that new blade design, and what are some of the options that we'll have to choose from on these new machines?
With blades, we're constantly looking at making changes and improvements. And when it comes down to the dozer, that's the part that makes the money, is the blade. Recently, we've updated the skins of these blades to be an abrasion resistant or an AR400 material. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually shine up a little bit better. So you're going to see the blade kind of what we call season in, and that's going to allow it to roll material and not have material stick to it. So that's going to be on all of the 700, 750, and 850L blades. Another thing that we've done is we've started looking at blade widths, and we wanted to give the customers a few more options. So on a 700, for example, we're going to have 2 narrower blades and 2 wider blades. Now the narrower blades are for the XLTs, the 2 wider blades are for the LGPs. The reason we're doing that is because not every job site can handle a wide blade or a narrow blade. So this way, if you get into an application where maybe you have transport restrictions, or you're working between tight buildings or a lot of trees, you can shrink that blade down and go with a narrower blade to get into those harder to grade areas. Or if you have a big project and you want to cover a lot of ground, we can step up to those wider blade options. On the 750L, we've also added a new blade. It's a 161 inch. And that blade lets you cover a lot of ground per pass. So when it comes to finishing out an area, that's going to be extremely noticeable, being able to cover more material.
And I know that there are 3 undercarriage options available on these machines. Could you kind of go into a little bit of detail and talk a little bit about the differences between those and what they might match up for, like what customers might be right for each of those options?
So we do offer 3 undercarriages on the 700L. And basically the reason we do that is because every customer's application is a little bit different. And we want to make sure that the customer has a choice and they can configure the machine as best they can to fit their application. So the first, what we're going to call the entry-level type undercarriage, that's going to be a heavy-duty sealed and lubricated track. And that's just as it says. It's the traditional salt track. The next step up from there is going to be that same salt track configuration, but we're going to take the SC2 coated bushings and replace those in the track. So it actually gives you a hardened coating on the track bushings. What that does for you is it provides about 50% more life of the bushing. So you can kind of tailor that to match the application that you're in. The next step up is what we call max life. So on a max life undercarriage, we actually add extra wear material to the track itself. So the rails are actually a little bit thicker. The idlers and rollers actually have more cross section to them. And it adds about 460 pounds to the machine of extra wear material to that track. That also uses the same SC2 coated bushing, so you get the added benefit of more wear material and a hardened bushing. So you're going to add about 50% of life to all the wear components. The best part about it is they're all fully interchangeable. So let's say you have a machine that you order with max life undercarriage, and it gets to where you need to do a new undercarriage on that machine. You can actually revert back and go to an extended life or even a heavy duty salt. You don't have to go with that premium undercarriage down the road. So it gives the operator or the customer more flexibility in how they want to maintain that machine longer into the life.
I kind of want to go back to the cab now. A little bit before we were talking about kind of those increases in visibility, but if you could, comfort and paying attention to an operator's like longer shifts is becoming a bigger and bigger thing for a lot of the OEMs, making sure guys are comfortable in the cab while they're working. Could you talk a little bit about the design changes and the design improvements on these new dozers that's really aimed at operator comfort, be it the control layout or the ergonomics, just kind of cover all of that?
So for the new 700 and 750L cabs, we spent a ton of time working with customers to find out what was really important to them. We took all that feedback and we rolled it in with the engineers and turned them loose and kind of let them do a ground up. A couple of the things that they really wanted was more space. So we actually added more volume to the cab, about 17% more cab volume. So it's going to have a bigger feel. We also went after the windows. So the 700K previously had sliding windows that would gum up with debris and get sticky over time. So we've actually gone to what we used on the larger dozers, which is a pop-out style window. So now they function even after they get a few hours on them. And it helps with the noise. So we drive some of the noise out of the cab. We also updated the cab mounts to a viscous style cab mount. And that helps eliminate some of the transition of the noise coming from the machine up into the cab. It makes the cab quieter. It also drastically improves the ride quality of the machine. So it takes a lot of that shock and vibration out that the customer would normally feel. We also added a new premium seat option that has both heat and ventilation. It also has a little bit better support, a wider back, and it has a little bit of extra fore-aft travel, so even larger operators are going to feel comfortable on that machine. The joystick grips are new and updated as well, and that's something that we spent a lot of time making sure that we had right. So we actually maintained console-mounted controls, so they're hard-mounted to the machine itself, and that provides really good stability for the operator to make fine corrections, especially when working in rough terrain or on slopes. And with those, we've also added proportional controls for blade angle, transmission speed, plus we've included all of the grade control functionality, whether it's on-off or increment decrement, right into the grips. We've also added an automatic temperature control system. So now the operator can focus on getting the material where he wants it and not have to worry about adjusting the HVAC system or changing the temperature. And with all the glass that we've added, the sun can heat that cab up pretty quick. So that is a great feature to have in there for those long, hot days. We've also added a new option for a factory installed rear view camera. So that camera is going to give you a high definition picture of what's behind you. And that's displayed right on our new 7-inch LCD monitor. Some other changes to the front dash included raising up the smart grade monitor to be a little bit higher in the front dash. So now it's more in line with the sight as the operator glances back and forth from blade edge to blade edge. They'll be able to just scan past that monitor and see how things are looking. And the last thing that we've done to the cab is we've added a premium Bluetooth radio option that has auxiliary and USB inputs, which is another really nice feature for those operators.
And Cory, we've mentioned a couple of times now those transmission presets. Could you kind of do a deep dive on those? Because those are actually really cool. Being able to dive into that new monitor and really, I mean, at a very fundamental level, tailor the feel of this machine to however you like it. Talk a little bit about that.
With the transmission presets, we know that everybody has a different way they want the machine to run. And in the past, we've always had to go in and kind of manipulate the settings one at a time. And it was kind of tedious, and there were a lot of different settings to go through. With the new presets, we're able to give you some selections to start out. And they're very well described. So we have a production setting, which is going to make the machine feel really quick and aggressive. We have a normal setting, which is going to be what any operator that was coming out of a K or a J, it would feel very similar to that. And then we also have a smooth setting, which is going to just tone everything down, kind of take the edge off. And we see a lot of older operators that really like the smooth setting because it doesn't jar their backs or it just makes it feel a little bit more relaxed. And then we also have a new feature that we've added called torque shift mode. And this system actually emulates a torque converter machine. So for the operators that want to have that feel of being able to shift gears, this is going to do just that. It's going to give them that bigger step shift and give them that feel and feedback of actually shifting the machine. So these are some really great things that we've added. We've also added some other custom features. So we can start with any one of those presets and go into the custom mode and fine tune or tailor if we want to tweak certain settings within each one of those. What you're going to notice with all of these L-Series machines is when you put them into production mode, they're going to be quick. And that's something that we made a priority. We want to make sure that when an operator gets in there and they want it to feel like a hot rod, it will.
All right, I want to move on a little bit to kind of durability and some of the improvements you guys have made there, specifically with guarding some of the lines on this machine. Go into that a little bit, and also on the maintenance side of things. What can guys expect in terms of making their daily checks or any kind of improvements in kind of protection on the access doors and everything you've made there?
Sure. So we've done a lot of things on the maintenance side. We've added inline DEF filters so that we don't have to actually go inside the DEF tank to change that filter out. And then on the maintenance side, or the durability side, we've actually added some spring guard to our hydraulic hoses that go out to the blade to give them a little bit of added protection. We've also increased the bushing area on a lot of the pins on the C-frame. We grew those by about 10%, which is just going to keep that machine tighter, especially in a grading application. We completely redesigned all the hose and hydraulic routings and the wire harness routings. So we've streamlined those, so we eliminated a lot of the rub points and actually got rid of a lot of leak points as well. So ran one hose from component to component instead of having a splice in the middle. The sheet metal thickness, again, we're about 50% thicker on that. We've also added a engine compartment light to be able to see the engine compartment in the early hours or after dark. So those are some of the great features that we've rolled into that.
And before we wrap things up, I did want to touch base a little bit on the 850L. Now, obviously, these are all L series loaders, and the 850 is going to at a very basic point, it's going to offer more power than these the 700 and the 750. But how else does that larger machine stack up with the 700 and the 750L in terms of feature set and new updates? Just because they're all basically part of this new L series generation, how do they stack up together?
So you're going to notice a lot of common trends when we look at L series machines. Whether it's a 700, a 750, or an 850, they're all going to have that same look and feel. A lot of the same cab updates we're going to see shared amongst these machines. So, we talked about the joystick controls. They're going to be common across all of these. The premium seat, you're going to see rolled across. LED lights that are brighter and put out more intensity, those are going to be shared across these machines. And that same common trend of performance, comfort, and ease. You're going to keep seeing that over and over in all these models. One other thing, when we talked about the 6.8 liter engine and why we kept that and the durability behind it, another thing that I wanted to point out was with the John Deere engine systems, they've done a lot of work on the final tier 4 and the emission strategies. And that's something that Deere is really proud of because we do have a very robust design. And in fact, on the Deere Dozers, we actually put a DPF assurance policy out that's going to warranty that DPF filter for 5 years or 10,000 hours. So the customer doesn't have to worry about it. And that's another reason why we wanted to stay with a proven design like we have with that 6.8 liter engine.
All right, Cory. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for us on the discussion of these new L series dozers. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk with us. It's very much appreciated. And yeah, thanks again. Good to talk to you, man.
Great. Thanks, Wayne.
So that is going to wrap it up for this week's episode of The Dirt. But as always, we want to hear what you guys are thinking. What do you think of the new machines we talked about today? What do you think about that budget shortfall situation in North Carolina? And what do you think of these new dozers from Deere that we talked with Cory Brant about? Let us know your thoughts. Whatever questions you may have, put those in the comments below. We love to hear what you guys are thinking. And if you liked this video and found any of the information in it of any use at all, please do us a favor and hit the like button below. It really helps our channel out. And if you want more videos on the latest in the construction industry, construction equipment, gear, trucks, and more, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you're getting up-to-the-minute alerts whenever we drop a new video. Thank you guys so much again for watching. We really appreciate it, and we will see you next time.